Welcome! NOAA has just issued the Global Climate Report for June of 2018, and this video is going to summarize it. Well, it turns out that June of 2018 was the fifth warmest June on record, being 0.75 degrees centigrade above the 20th century average. This is a map of areas of unusual warmth or unusual cold for that month, with dark red indicating record warmth and dark blue indicating record cold. Now, you'll often hear on some YouTube channels pushing the idea that we're moving into an ice age about these areas of record cold, such as the one off of the Greenland coast, or in northern Canada, in Russia, or off the Chilean coast. But what they're not mentioning here is the larger and more widespread number of record warm pixels around the planet. This indicates that the planet is not heading towards a new ice age, but is still warming. Pretty much the whole planet is telling us the same story. Land temperatures were the fifth warmest overall, ocean temperatures were the sixth warmest, and they combined to make the overall global picture the fifth warmest June on record. Compare the northern and southern hemispheres. The southern hemisphere was the eighth warmest on record, the northern hemisphere was the fifth warmest on record. Now, all of this despite the fact that we're in so-called ENSO neutral conditions, where that means we're not in either a warming El Nino cycle or a cooling La Nina cycle. We've had 402 consecutive months since the last time we had a month that had below the 20th century average temperature. That occurred in December of 1984. That means if you're under 33 years of age, you've never experienced a month with a below average global temperature. Once again, the number of record high temperatures have outnumbered the number of record low temperatures. For June of 2018, we had 6,185 record highs compared with just 1,508 record lows. That's a ratio of 4 to 1. Year to date, we've had 57,468 record highs compared with 30,121 record lows. While this imbalance remains, the globe is still warming. So let's put June of 2018 on the chart here. And you can see that 2018 so far is lagging behind all four of the previous years. Even so, I believe it will probably be in the top 10 warmest years on record, possibly even in the top 5, as the last few months of the year are forecast to be trending towards an El Nino, which should create some new high temperature records. Now let's take a look at the upper atmosphere, the so-called satellite data that so many people seem very fond of. We'll start with the lower troposphere, which has an average altitude of measurement of 4 kilometers. Now the two groups that do this, UAH and RSS, pretty much agree that the anomaly for June is 0.2 degrees centigrade or more. That would make it about the 9th warmest June on record. And if you look at the overall trend, it says it's at least 0.1 degrees centigrade per decade. Now this is the very same data that some people claim has no trend in it at all or is cooling. Now, but this is the results published by the researchers themselves, and that includes two very prominent climate skeptics. Next we move on to the mid-troposphere at an altitude of about 7 kilometers. The two groups agree that the anomaly is about 0.18 degrees centigrade. That makes it the 11th warmest June on record. And the overall decadal trend is about 0.07 degrees centigrade. Now you'd expect it to be lower than the lower levels of the atmosphere because the mechanisms that control the temperatures there are different from the lower atmosphere. Lastly, we deal with the stratosphere. The two groups find an overall anomaly of about minus 0.3 degrees centigrade. That makes it the 10th or 12th coolest June on record. And the overall decadal trend is about minus 0.24 degrees centigrade. Now you'd expect the stratosphere to be cooling if the greenhouse gas theory is correct, because the stratosphere is partly warmed by upcoming infrared radiation. If that radiation is being absorbed and redirected by the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, then the stratosphere will cool. It's the only global warming theory that explains this cooling of the stratosphere. June of 2018 was the third warmest June on record in the United States. You can see where the records were really being set was around about the Four Corners area in the southwest, but most of the country was above average temperatures. There was only a small area of Montana and South Dakota that were substantially below average. From a rain point of view, the eastern half of the country got a lot more rain than normal. The western half of the country got a lot less. Well, let's take a look at the drought conditions in the United States. This is the United States Drought Monitor, and you can see that the primary area of drought is around the Four Corners region in the southwest, but really stretches from the Mississippi Valley all the way to the west coast. There's even some area of drought developing up in the New England area as well. Well, let's take a look at the sea ice status. Overall, that's well below average. Northern Hemisphere, we have had the fourth lowest area of sea ice on record, continuing the downward trend that we've been having for the last few years. Southern Hemisphere a little bit better, but still below average, being the eighth lowest on record. One of the most important factors in determining global climate is the status of the ENSO cycle, La Nina or El Nino. At the moment we're in neutral conditions, and that will likely prevail until about October of this year, when we'll probably slip into a mild El Nino. Neutral conditions should return by the spring of 2019. Let's take a look at the solar conditions. This is a plot of the sunspot number over the last 13 years. You can see the last couple of months there's been a sharp increase in the number of sunspots. I do not expect that to continue. In fact, I expect July to be dipping way back down again, because we've hardly had any sunspots so far. But this is perfectly normal. We seem to be heading towards a quite unusual solar minimum. And in fact, the Solar Influences Data Center in Belgium are already beginning to predict the onset of the next cycle in early 2020. So in summary then, June 2018 was the fifth warmest June on record. We've had 402 consecutive months with above average temperatures. We are currently in ENSO neutral conditions, so the warming will continue. Solar Cycle 25 is predicted to start in 2020. So until next time, goodbye.